Guys, you won't believe what this woman has done. I was sitting quietly on my farm, minding my own business, when suddenly I saw a bunch of people invading my land with cameras, spotlights, and even trailers. You know that saying, give them your hand, and they'll take your arm. Well, my patience was already at its limit when my unbearable neighborhood decided to outdo itself. My farm, my piece of paradise, where I raised my horses, grew my own corn, and lived in peace, suddenly became a Hollywood set. But not because I wanted to, of course. It was an ordinary day, as far as I knew. I woke up early, had my coffee watching the sun rise, and went to check on the animals. The smell of wet earth after the previous night's rain still hung in the air. But then, out of nowhere, I heard a strange noise. A truck engine, voices, the buzz-boom-boom of people messing with things they shouldn't be. And it wasn't until I turned the corner of the property that I almost fell backwards. There were a bunch of people in my pasture. And when I say a bunch, it wasn't half a dozen. There were dozens of people carrying cameras, spotlights, tents, boxes, wires all over the ground. And one of my horses even jumped backwards when he tripped over a piece of cable they'd put in there without even asking. And who was in the middle of this circus? Yes, her. The plague with the starched hair and the way of being the boss of everything, giving orders as if she had been appointed mayor of my estate. Now, don't think that this invasion came out of the blue. No, this woman had been testing my patience for a long time. The HOA in this neighborhood has always had a penchant for putting rules where they don't belong, but since she took over as president of the association, things have gotten worse. There has already been the drama of the fence, which broke the visual harmony, the clowning about the trees that cast shade where they shouldn't, and even a scandal because I had the nerve to put a scarecrow in my cornfield. That's right, a scarecrow. It scares the children, she said. I had to laugh to keep my face from hitting the wall. Only this time, she went too far. When I got close, she was standing there, hands on her hips, talking to a guy in a cap and headphones, probably the director of the movie she decided to film on my land. And as if I didn't exist, she continued giving orders. Set up that camera over there. I want to get a wide angle of the barn in the background. Oh, great. So now, as well as invading my farm, they were going to turn my barn into a cinematic background. All they had to do was ask me to play generic redneck number 3. Do you want to explain to me what the hell is going on here? I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. She didn't even blink. She just turned her head slowly, as if I were a passing annoyance, like a fly buzzing near her ear. Oh, you! She smiled. That smile I already knew was full of venom. So, darling, the HOA has approved a wonderful project. We're going to shoot a short film for a festival. Let's go, she said, as if there was an us, as if, at some point, I had agreed to this nonsense. You mean I approved it? Because, you see, this is my land, she laughed, a short, annoying laugh. Look, I don't see the point in all this drama. The movie is going to be an incredible way to publicize the community, and your farm is the perfect place. You should feel honored. Oh, well, I should be grateful that they invaded my property. Of course, I should be handing out juice to visitors and thanking them for the opportunity to have my ground trampled by a bunch of people who have never seen a chicken up close in their lives. I took a deep breath because I really wanted to take a bucket of manure and throw it at her head. But I'm a civilized person, up to a point. Okay, let's try again. What right do you have to put this circus here on my land? She snorted, rolling her eyes as if I were a tantruming teenager and not the rightful owner of that piece of land. Look, you're a member of our community and I'm not a member of that damn HOA. Ah, the shock on her face. It looked like I had told her that Santa Claus was a hoax. What do you mean? Everyone here is a member, except me. I never signed anything, never paid any fees, because this is not part of the HOA. This is private land, completely out of your jurisdiction. She opened her mouth. It closed. She opened it again. If she had Windows running in her head, you could hear the little error noise of the system crashing. That can't be right. Oh, but it is. It's absolutely right. And guess what? That means everyone here, I gestured with my hand, pointing at the entire film crew, is trespassing. The realization dawned on me, but she tried to maintain her pose. Now, there's no need to be so extreme. Everyone has 5 minutes to leave before I call the police. Now, the desperation began. The director's eyes widened and he pulled a phone out of his pocket, probably already ordering everything to be cancelled. The assistants started looking at each other, waiting for orders. A guy holding a camera almost tripped over a wire in his haste to get things together. The only one still standing defiantly was her. This is going to be bad for you. Oh, but of course. The classic trick, making me feel guilty for defending my own ground. What will be bad is the amount of fines you'll get for this mess. She crossed her arms. She knew she'd lost, but she wasn't going to admit it so easily. All right, let's go, she finally said, with that tone of someone who wants to pretend it was her own decision. And just like that, the show was over. One by one, they left, collecting the wires, tents, and equipment. She was the last to leave, giving me a venomous look, as if swearing revenge. I stood there, looking at the trail of destruction they had left in my pasture, and wondering what misfortune this woman was going to get up to next, because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that people like her don't accept losing. And I was right. This was far from over. I'd like to say that after that pathetic scene, the story was over, that the people in the movie picked up their trunks and never bothered again. But of course, that would be underestimating the ability of a woman like that to be a professional nuisance. Because you see, certain people can't accept losing. They don't go home and reflect on their life choices. They don't admit they made a mistake and move on. They stay there, mulling things over, making plans, trying to find a way to turn the tables. And that's exactly what she was doing. The cinematic invasion of my farm was over, but the HOA wasn't going to let it go. Or rather, she wasn't going to let it go. The first few weeks after the incident were uneventful, except that I knew the guy. If there's one thing that makes me suspicious, it's when someone who always gets in the way suddenly becomes quiet. And so, the warnings began. First, one day, I found an envelope slipped under my door. Just like that. I opened it, and there it was. A document with the HOA logo, full of fancy words and legal terms that someone had clearly copied from Google, claiming that my farm was in breach of community regulations. How interesting. Community regulations on land that is not part of the community. I thought about ignoring it, but my curiosity won out. I called the number on the paper. Who answered? She herself. "Oh, good of you to call," she said, with a tone like she was ready to give me the slip. "I imagine you've received our notification. I imagine you know that this notice is a joke." She laughed. Laughed, as if I'd told her a funny joke. "Look, there's no need to be hostile. The HOA just wants to make sure that all the properties in the area maintain a standard of quality. Of course, because my estate, which has been here for decades, suddenly became a problem for quality after I sent that bunch of filmmakers away. The problem, dear," she continued, already wrapped up in the story, "is that your barn is visibly deteriorating. And according to our rules, structures in poor condition must be renovated or removed." There you go. That was the pitch. Since the woman couldn't use my farm as a backdrop, she now wanted to find a way to bore me with rules that didn't even apply to me. "My barn has been here longer than any house in this neighborhood," I said, already feeling my anger heat up, "and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it." "Well, we have photos that say otherwise." Photos. Photos. Someone had come to my farm to take pictures of my barn without my permission. This was no longer just annoying. This was invasion of privacy. I'm just going to say this once. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. My land is not part of the HOA. My buildings are none of your business. If I want to paint my barn hot pink and hang a sign that says, "Karen, don't tread here," I can. You don't have to be so dramatic. she replied, with a straight face. "I'm just trying to help." If helping meant forcing someone to follow non-existent rules, then I really needed to review my concept of help. I hung up on her before my patience evaporated. But, as expected, this only made matters worse. Over the next few days, people started showing up, doing inspections near my property. First it was a guy in a reflective vest and clipboard who stood outside the fence, analyzing my barn as if he were assessing a crime scene. The next day, a woman with a tablet started taking pictures of the trees. There was also a black car, which drove slowly along the dirt road 3 times in the space of an hour. Things were getting bad. Then, one fine day, while I was looking after the horses, the icing on the cake arrived. A truck from the city pulled up at the entrance to the farm, with a group of workmen ready to, well, I didn't know exactly what for, but I already had an idea of what was coming. I went there, already in ready-for-disaster mode. "Can I help you?" The driver, a guy who looked like he just wanted to finish his shift in peace, looked at me a little blankly and pulled out some paperwork. "Order to remove rubble and condemned structures," he said, pointing to my barn. Rubble. Rubble! The building that my grandfather had built with his own hands, that I had held firm and strong for years, that was still as solid as a rock, had become rubble in these people's paperwork? I laughed, but it wasn't a laugh of amusement. It was that laugh of pure unbelievability, that laugh that comes when you realize that the level of absurdity has reached a surreal level. So now you're going to demolish my barn?" The man scratched the back of his head. "Look, I just follow orders. They said you have approval from the HOA and the Town Planning Committee." "Oh, right. HOA approval. There was just one detail. They had no authority over my property." "Well then," I said, crossing my arms, "and did you bring the court authorization to enter here?" The guy froze. "What do you mean, court authorization, to touch my property? Because, you see, this doesn't belong to the HOA. This is private land, and if you set foot here without a warrant, you'll be trespassing." The look of panic on his face. Wait! This isn't part of the Ilayen." The guy picked up the phone right away and started making calls. I could hear the tone of confusion on the other end. A few minutes later, he turned to me, already closing the paperwork. "Sorry, sir. That was a mistake." "A mistake? Yes, of course. A very convenient mistake, involving several planning stages, falsified approvals, and attempts at intimidation." The workers went back to the truck and turned around. But I knew the story didn't end there. Because this was no longer just about a barn. This was a declared war. And if this woman wanted a fight, she was going to get one. If I had $1 for every time this woman tried to screw me over, I'd have enough money to buy her house and turn it into a beautiful parking lot. But unfortunately, instead of money, all I got was a headache. After the failed attempt to knock down my barn, I thought she was going to, I don't know, get real, move on, maybe find another poor bastard to torment. But no, some people don't know how to lose. And this woman was the captain of the team that refused to lose. She disappeared for a few days. No movement. No idiotic letter from the HOA. No stupid inspectors. No strange cars driving around. It was as if the universe was giving me a break. But of course, that wasn't it. It was just the storm before the hurricane. Because then, out of the blue, man, another notice arrived in the mail. This time, it wasn't a fake demolition order. It was something even more ridiculous. A notice that my property was in debt to the HOA. I almost choked with laughter. In debt to the HOA? And it was no small matter. The paper said that I owed an absurd amount for accumulated community maintenance fees. Something in the neighborhood of $8,000. What was that woman smoking? I picked up the phone and dialed the number on the paper. A bureaucratic voice answered, clearly one of those assistants who don't know anything and just repeat the script. Willow Creek Community Homeowners Association. What can I do for you? Hi, I want to know why the hell you're saying I owe $8,000 to the HOA when I'm not part of it. Pause. the sound of keys being pressed. "What's your address?" I passed. More keystrokes. "Ah, sir, it seems your property was recently added to the HOA's jurisdiction." "Oh, yes, recently added, because that's how it works now. You go to sleep owning a piece of free land and wake up owing taxes to the short-haired troublemakers union." "That's a lie," I replied, keeping my voice as calm as possible so as not to have a stroke right then and there. "My property is not part of the HOA. It never was. We never signed anything. Sir, I'm just reading what's in the system. If you wish to contest it, there is a form available that you can fill out and submit for review. I'll contest it with a lawyer and a lawsuit." "That's what?" The woman stammered something about not needing to take legal action, and I hung up. It was ridiculous enough that they tried to tear down my barn. Now they wanted to shove my farm into the HOA by sheer force of will. And who had done it? Guess what? I took the car and drove straight to the HOA headquarters, a small white building with a tacky sign that read Willow Creek Community Administration. And there she was, behind the reception desk, fiddling with papers as if she were the president of the country. I walked in with firm steps, threw the billing notice on her desk, and crossed my arms. "Explain this to me. Now." She looked up slowly, with a smile that showed she was enjoying herself. "Oh, did you get our notice?" "Yes, I did. And before you try to pull that stunt, my farm is not part of this damn HOA." She tilted her head. "Ah, but it is now." "What?" "Yes," she said, picking up a piece of paper and pointing to a fake signature. "We voted at a meeting and approved the incorporation of your property into the HOA. Now you're officially part of the community." I didn't know whether to laugh or call an exorcist. "You think you can just vote to take over my land?" She made a little, "Who can't, right?" face and shrugged. "It was a democratic decision. You didn't show up to the meeting to contest it. You didn't warn me that this was going to happen." She cracked a fake smile. "We're sorry you didn't get more involved in the community, but now that you're officially part of it, you have to pay your fees like everyone else." Patience had completely evaporated. "You know what? Fine. You want to play lawyer? Then let's play." I left straight for the office of a lawyer I knew. I explained the situation, showed him the documents, and he practically laughed. "Do they really think they can just adopt your property?" "Yes. It seems that the HOA has become a Roman Empire and is now conquering land." The lawyer already started preparing an official rebuttal, and it didn't take long to send the HOA a nice legal notice. Either they canceled this nonsense immediately, or there would be a lawsuit so big that even their grandchildren would be paying damages. And guess what? The next day, I get a dry email saying that, after an internal review, my farm is no longer part of the HOA. How convenient. But I already knew. She hadn't given up yet. I could feel it. Her game wasn't over yet. I wanted to say that after the legal notice, the lawyer's letter, and all the bureaucratic tomfoolery, this woman had finally come to her senses and decided to get on with her life. But no, if there's one thing certain people don't understand, it's the word no. I'd already sent this woman out to pasture about 5 times. I had already proven that my property was not part of the HOA. I had already thrown the lawyer at her. But her? Persistent as a tick on a mongrel dog? What happened next was what I call the grand finale of human incompetence. Well, I was already relaxed, thinking the war was over, when I woke up one fine morning with a disgraceful déjà vu. Noise, engines, people walking back and forth, voices. No, not again. I jumped out of bed, pulled on a shirt, and went out the door ready to set the world on fire. And what do I see? Yes, exactly what you're thinking. A bunch of filmmakers again, all over my farm. Again. Only this time, it was worse. This time, it wasn't just a film crew. It was a whole event, with tents set up, tables, people holding clipboards, bigger cameras, and even a fucking VIP tent with white sofas. White sofas, my God in heaven, in the middle of my farm. And who was there? In the middle of it all? In a hideous beige suit, looking like the manager of a shopping mall? Yes, her. The ultimate neighborhood disgrace. This time, I didn't even take a deep breath. I didn't even try to calm down. I just went straight for it. Are you fucking kidding me? Time stood still. The camera crew turned to me. The assistants froze in place. The director, a guy in a scarf and sunglasses, even though it was 8 a.m., opened his eyes wide. What about her? She giggled. The damn giggle that already meant I screwed up, and I know I can't get away with it, but I'm going to try anyway. Look at that! You're up early today. Oh, I wanted to laugh, but I preferred to save my energy for something more useful, like shouting at the police in 5 minutes. What the hell is this? A small community production. You don't have permission to be here. She sighed. Are we going again? We at HOA decided that this space would be perfect for... The HOA has no jurisdiction here, damn it. She blinked, pretending to be surprised. Are you sure? Because, you know, enough. I walked away, took my cell phone out of my pocket and dialed 911. Hi, yes, I want to report a break-in. Yes, again. Yes, the same person. Yes, I warned you last time. Yes, I'm going to report it. And then, finally, what I'd always wanted happened. Within 40 minutes, 4 cars were parked at the entrance to my farm. And look, the show was wonderful. The policeman arrived in a mood of, that woman again, for God's sake. When I pointed at her and explained everything, including the previous invasion, the attempt to forge taxes, the attempt to demolish my barn, and now this filming nonsense, well, this time there was no excuse. The cops went straight for her. One of them arrived with handcuffs in hand. Ma'am, we need you to come with us. Oh, her face. The indignation. The outrage. What? You are being detained for trespassing, disobeying an official order, and falsifying documents. And then, my friends, I saw something beautiful happen. She panicked. She tried to argue. She tried to say it was a misunderstanding. She tried to say that I was exaggerating. She even tried to cry. But do you know what the most delicious part was? The film crew fled on the spot. The director grabbed his things and ran before the police asked if he knew he was filming illegally. Assistants started collecting equipment in a hurry, knocking over tripods, tripping over cables. One guy knocked over a cooler full of soda and soaked the entire white sofas. And me? I just stood there, with my arms crossed, watching the show. She was handcuffed. She tried to say that it didn't have to come to this, that it was just an innocent event, that nobody needed to be arrested. The police wouldn't even listen. They put her in the car, closed the door, and drove off. And just like that, it was over. After that, the following weeks were paradise. The HOA was completely silent. No stupid letters, no clueless inspectors, nothing. And why was that? Because when the woman was arrested, they began to investigate further and discovered that she had been embezzling money from the HOA itself. Yes, not only was she an insufferable neighborhood sheriff, but she was also stealing money. She ended up being prosecuted not only for trespassing, but for fraud, embezzlement, and falsifying documents. The HOA was so burned by the story that its own members called for the association to be dissolved. And in the end, I got exactly what I wanted. Peace. Peace. And the certainty that that woman would never appear in front of me again. Because do you know where she ended up? In jail? And after she got out, she had to move out of town. The end. Moral of the story? If you have a plot of land and a crazy HOA trying to take it over, hold on tight. Because sometimes patience wins the war. And other times, you just have to call the police, and it all works out. And if you agree with me, let me know in the comments. And don't forget to leave a like.